YouTube, this is Blake from techno-buzz.com and the techno-buzz YouTube channel, bringing you a review of the iPhone 5. Now before we begin, I'd just like to quickly talk about our new structure we're trying here on techno-buzz, where we're going to do this full formal review, as well as a secondary review. We're going to call it What You Need to Know, and in this case, What You Need to Know iPhone 5, and that's going to be a quicker summary. Anyways, let's get started with the iPhone 5 review. Alright, let's get started. So, here's the iPhone 5 in all of its glory. Now I must say, this is a very pretty device. Probably the best designed phone hardware I've ever seen. Let's do a quick tour of the device. Obviously this is the front, the screen, the pièce de résistance, if you want to say it that way. You're going to find the HD FaceTime camera up on top, your headset speaker, your 4-inch screen. Now that 4-inch screen has a resolution of 640 by 1136 pixels, makes a pixel density of 326 ppi, and on the bottom you will find your home button. On the left hand side of the phone is the normal iPhone fare with your mute switch, up volume button, down volume button. And on the right hand side of the phone, there is your nano SIM card slot. On the bottom of the phone is your headphone jack, your microphone, your new lightning connector port, and your speaker. On the top of the phone is going to be your power on off button. And on the rear of the phone, where it is also very nice, and I'll talk about that in a second, you're going to find your 8 megapixel camera with LED flash. Alright, so now the iPhone 5 has something really new to Apple for their design of the iPhone, and that is a full body metal finish. When I say that, your antenna's metal, as well as the back, with little pieces of glass on the top and the bottom. You're going to notice that overall it just makes the phone, in my opinion, feel a little bit sturdier, a little bit safer in the hand. Now speaking of the feel of the phone in your hand, this guy is ridiculously light. I'm talking ridiculously light at 112 grams. Has a physical dimensions of 123.8 millimeters by 58.6 millimeters by 7.6 millimeters thin. I'm not going to say thick because it really isn't. When you first pick up this phone, it is tremendously light. You pick it up, when I first got it out of the box and picked it up, I was, astonished, just amazed by how light this phone really is. Now, quick rundown of the known specs. As everybody knows, Apple's not the biggest people for releasing their specs, but we can still try to talk about them. It comes with either 16, 32, or 64 gigabytes of internal storage. It's been reported to have 1 gigabyte of RAM. It runs Apple's A6 dual-core processor clocked at 1.2 gigahertz a core. The graphics processor is a PowerVR SGX 543. Has an accelerometer, a gyro sensor, proximity sensor, and a compass. Other than that, it has a 1440 milliamp hour battery. LTE and HSPA Plus are both on board. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the performance of the phone. When we're talking about performance, we're going to look at 3 key areas. The overall feeling of the operating system, so how snappy is it when you do this, back and forth, go through menus and other things like that. The other things we're going to take a look at is how fast is web browsing and how fast does it render pages. Another thing is how fast does it launch apps. Now, let's begin with talking about the usability of the operating system. The operating system is still iOS, and this version of iOS is iOS 6. Brings some improvements, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Overall, though, this phone feels snappy with no delay doing anything. Bringing up settings, everything is really quick. There's no stutter while scrolling through apps. Going to change settings and things like that. There are no problems there, and I really must say that that is one of the biggest things for this phone. Is in the time I've been using it, which I've been using it extensively, it has never run into an issue where it's lagged out, is too slow, isn't performing well. No, you're not going to have that. This phone has performed tremendously under all sorts of tests and pressure that I've put it under. Taking a look at web browsing performance on this guy here and just its usability. Obviously the normal Safari browser on here. Now this is connected to a pretty fast Wi-Fi network here. And we will try loading up the techno-buzz page. And this is our mobile version of our website, which as you can see loaded up fairly quickly and is extremely responsive. Now let's try switching over off the mobile theme and going to the normal version of techno-buzz.com. Once again, loaded extremely quickly, and the overall performance of using pinch to zoom and double tap to zoom, it is just, there's no delay. The screen doesn't need time, or the phone does not need time to re-render the screen. When you zoom in, boom, it's just done. And that's what I love about the iPhone 5. It truly is an amazingly fast phone. It is. It's crazy how fast this phone really is, and I absolutely love its speed. Now, let's try opening up just a few other pages here, just to see what they are like. We're going to go to we're going to go to the Apple homepage there. And within a matter of seconds, the Apple page was up. Now, I'm trying to show off basically how fast the phone renders the pages, because I have a really fast internet connection here, so it really shouldn't have any lag to do with waiting to get on the web. And browsing performance, including HTML5, is extremely smooth. Alright, let's head back here. Now I'm going to clear out my apps tray. Here, my multitasking tray. Pardon me if I miss a few times, I'm using this from an angle. Now that I've cleared that out, let's try launching a game like Temple Run and seeing how long it takes to go. Boom, there we go. Temple Run up and running. Smooth 3D graphics. Now this is one of the first games to be optimized for the iPhone 5's larger screen. I'll talk more about the screen size in just a little bit. But as you can see, when I hit play here, the game runs incredibly smooth. Almost like you're not really doing anything. I mean, it is just, there's no graphical problems, and I've run into this with every game I've played. Of course I die, but I've run into this with every game I've played on the phone. Now, to show you what an app looks like that isn't optimized for the iPhone 5's display or iOS 6, I'm going to open up Google Earth here. Now Google Earth, as you can see, maybe if I zoom in a little bit, let's try spinning the globe and going here, just to fill in the color. So as you can see, if I bring this up a little bit closer here and try to focus in on it. Come on, focus. There we go. To give you a contrast, there's the edge of the display right there, and that's where it brings it down to. So there's an empty black space up there, and there's an empty black space on the bottom. That's how they fit existing iOS apps or ones that are not yet optimized for the iPhone 5 on the iPhone 5's extended display. And it works quite well. It is just a little bit annoying getting your hand placement used to, because you get used to holding it from there and touching stuff down here to having to actually shift it up a bit in order to use the app normally. But once you get over that, it's pretty easy going from there. Alright, so now let's talk a little bit about music, performance, and multimedia. Music and multimedia is truly where the iPhone shines. That's where it's always shined. It is the best multimedia music device there is on the market, hands down. Nothing has really beaten the iPhone at it. Others have tried, and others have come close, including Windows Phone, Zune integration, things like that. But the iPhone is still the best music playing phone there is, hands down. But let's still talk a little bit about that. So when it comes to music quality, expect standard Apple music quality. I can't play a sample, unfortunately, due to copyright restrictions, but you can get the idea that the music that will be played is, of a certain quality, and it truly is. It is a really high quality, the audio, and it's always been like that. So there's really no changes in the audio quality you're going to notice on the phone. Where you are going to notice a difference though is how videos play, because when Apple decided to go to this 4-inch screen, this is a 16:9 aspect ratio screen, or the standard high definition aspect ratio. meaning that things like HD videos play back extremely well, or even non-HD videos. Videos, movies in general, play back extremely well on this phone. Let's see if I can open up YouTube here. Alright, and I'm back, and I've already queued up a video here. This is my review of the HTC One V, just to show you some examples of how the videos fit in there. This is Blake from techno-buzz.com. Yep, video in a video. But there you go. As you can see, this is one of my HD 720p videos, and it fits in absolutely perfectly on the screen. There is no wasted space whatsoever, which is something you haven't really gotten with the iPhone or really any other phone up until now, because the screen space has always had bars on either the top or the bottom. This completely eliminates that problem, allowing for you to get the most viewing, the most out of your screen. I must say I have watched a movie or two now on this iPhone myself in the past few days, and it is just wonderful. It is great. It really makes it feel like a larger phone like the HTC Titan 2 because it takes the entire screen, which is something that other phones don't do. Now, you may be noticing that I am using YouTube from the browser, and there is good reason for that, and that comes to do with iOS 6, but in the iOS 6 update, the official YouTube app was actually removed as Google's ending their partnership with Apple, or Apple's ending their partnership with Google. And that will also play into the maps a little bit later. So this YouTube is just a link to the web browsing, as the app that is available in the App Store isn't designed to take advantage of the full screen on the iPhone 5, and honestly, it's just a better experience doing it from the web. Alright, next up, let's talk a little bit about maps and new features. Alright, so when we're talking about maps and new features, I'm not necessarily talking about features that are new or exclusive to the iPhone 5, because many of these features are not going to be exclusive to the iPhone 5. What it is going to be, though, is it is going to be a general overview of what's new in iOS 6, and that happened to be on the iPhone 5. So let's begin. The first thing you're going to notice is this Passbook app, which has never been on your home screen before. Now, Passbook is a way to allow you to use movie tickets, to have concert tickets, to have store cards, coupons, boarding passes, anything that needs to be scanned, essentially, can be put in Passbook, or will be able to be put in Passbook in a future update in the, coming or in the near future. Right now, I don't actually have anything that's taking advantage of Passbook. I did actually go to see a movie in the theaters, and our local theater company has an app that does work with Passbook, and it brings up the ticket until your movie time on your screen, and once the ticket's been used, it disappears again. So unfortunately, I can't actually show you Passbook working, but just imagine from what the pictures you've seen, you have little tiles and icons with QR or barcodes there that allow clerks to scan your phone in order to give you admittance to places, discounts, and other such related things. Heading back to the home screen here, other improvements are going to be minor UI improvements. So if I head to the App Store under Featured, you're going to notice that the layout of the App Store has changed slightly, and it's a little bit more Google Play-ish than it was before, but it's also a very clean and a very nice interface. Everything runs smoothly again on here. It is a nice interface, and it does highlight the apps that have already been designed to work with iOS 5 and iOS 6 and the iPhone 5, which is great. I love that about it. You'll see minor UI tweaks everywhere in the operating system. In all honesty, the last thing to show you is going to be maps, and I actually have a bit to talk about on maps, as I imagine most people have already heard. So let's get started with my overview of iOS 6. Alright, so this is iOS 6 maps. Now, if we're looking here at a map of Los Angeles right now, and as you can see, there's a bunch of things in here. Now, why I said there's a lot to talk about to maps is because there's good and there's bad to the new iOS 6 maps and Apple's own mapping technologies. The big thing here to know is now that they've dropped Google, they're running totally independently. And what's happened is, as it's a new service that they've developed in-house and with the assistance of TomTom, you're going to actually have a significant reduction in the amount of points of interest. Now, there's also been several problems where roads just don't exist, roads that do exist are incorrectly marked. Connections and intersections aren't correct. You've lost the ability to use Street View, as that's not associated with Google. There's no access to transit built into the app. All it does is refer you to other apps. There's a wide variety of things to complain about. But, regardless of complaining about this, because you can complain all you want, it's not going to go away. Has Apple done a good job with Maps? Yes and no. Let me put it this way. For a first attempt, for, version 0.5, beta version, like this is a first attempt at Map, Apple has done a commendable job. They have done what most companies weren't able to do in their first version, and they've built a very well-designed mapping system. Where have they gone wrong? Completely abandoning the Google interface and the Google ecosystem has actually, stabbed them in the back a little bit, because now that they have their own mapping service, it's not complete. I feel that they kind of jumped the gun with iOS 6 Maps. It wasn't done when they released it, and now people are kind of stuck with it. Now, they have done some cool things, but I feel like they've focused too much on doing cool things like 3D flyover, which I'll show you in just a moment here, than actually working on getting the core of the Maps app to work. What's good about Maps? It has built-in turn-by-turn directions, built-in turn-by-turn navigation. And I must say, when you get the correct address into its turn-by-turn navigation, it's by far the best turn-by-turn navigation I have ever used in my life. I am talking standalone GPSs, I'm talking, Android, I'm talking the third-party apps for the iPhone. Nothing has beaten this. And there's a few reasons why and a few things it does correctly. The first thing that I like about it, that it does well, is let's just say you are on I-5 here, as an example. You're on I-5, and it tells you to get off I-5 and take the 710. You go off I-5 and take the 710. As soon as you get on the 710, it will tell you, let's say, continue on Interstate 710 for 3.4 miles. And then or 3.5 kilometers, or whatever your local equivalent is going to be. And it's going to tell you that right when you turn onto the freeway. And then it will remind you again once you're at 500 meters per se, or half a kilometer, and then just slightly before it happens. But what I like about what it does when it does that, it gives you plenty of notice. A lot of GPS systems, when you make a turn and you're going for a long stretch, 20-odd kilometers, for example, it won't tell you you're going for 20-odd kilometers. You'll make the turn and it will go quiet. And it won't say anything until you're about to turn. At least when the iPhone's doing its thing, it gives you a fair amount of warning, which I'm really pleased with. So that technology is done correctly. There are some issues, and those are mainly revolving around the inaccuracies of the maps themselves versus any actual problems with navigation. So overall, I'm going to give navigation a definite thumbs up. That is one of the pluses, as I feel it gives you the correct amount of notice. It does what other applications should do but don't. Right, so now I'm going to show you one of the key features of iOS Maps. Now I'm going to use New York as an example because it is the best developed place for this feature. Let me quickly turn on satellite imagery. Now that I've switched over to satellite imagery, you can see that there's New York, Manhattan. Let me quickly change my view. And as I change my view, you notice how the buildings on Manhattan have turned 3D. Let me continue to zoom in. And as I get closer, you'll get more and more detailed 3D buildings. So there you go. Now you can fly over New York like you're there with detailed 3D buildings. Now remember before I was telling you how I felt like they spent too much time on some features and not enough time on others. This is one of those features that is really cool, and Apple's done a great job developing. Now mind you, it works pretty much only in New York, and I say that because in other cities the buildings models are a little bit glitched out and just aren't nearly as refined as they are in New York. But I also am saying this because sure, this is cool, but it doesn't have much use in the grand scheme of things. I would have rather they focused their attention on development over towards fixing the problems that Maps had. And I don't feel like they didn't know where they were and it was a big shock. I think they knew about it, but anyways, that's just a personal preference. Now that being said, this is really cool and you can get really far in there, like almost to street level with these 3D buildings. And yeah, this is one of those cool features, the unnecessary but cool features that the iOS 6 Maps has built in. I mean, it's a fun novelty, but I don't really ever see it having a practical use in the long term. Alright, so next up, let's talk a little bit about Siri. Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Welcome to Siri. Siri's everybody's favorite voice assistant. You know, a lot of people when the 4S came out thought, psst, what am I going to do with Siri? Same with me. That's what I thought. Because I didn't own the 4S. I skipped the 4S. I went from the 4 to the 5. I didn't get to play around with Siri much. But what I have learned in my short time using it on the iPhone and my few months of using it on the iPad, she's an incredibly well-developed piece of software. I mean, it's just incredible the things you can do with Siri, including sending messages to people, posting to your Facebook wall, sending a tweet, asking it complicated questions. Like, let's ask her what the circumference of the moon is, for example. What is the circumference of the moon?
Let me check on that. This might answer your question.
I mean, she doesn't read it out, but that's pretty crazy how she was able to find an answer to that. Let's ask her another question. Something simple this time. What time is it?
It's 8:46 p.m.
Now, something like this, you may be wondering, well, why are you going to ask Siri what time it is while you're looking straight at it? Well, imagine you're driving in your car, and you're using your Bluetooth speaker. Now, I know most cars have clocks built in, but some of the way their stereos work, the actual time doesn't show up, like in my car. So when you have your Bluetooth headset in, you push the button, and you can simply ask Siri what time it is, and she'll read out the time. You can also ask her other questions like, what is the date? And simple commands like that,
Monday, September 24th, 2012.
she'll be able to figure out very easily. But she can do other things too. Like, you're going home. Now, I'm going to use examples of things that have happened in the past because I don't know of any sporting events happening right now. But let's say you wanted to check the score of the Canucks hockey game or the Blue Jays baseball game or whatever. It doesn't really matter. You can simply ask her questions. Now, I'm going to ask her who won the Stanley Cup last year, just to show how the service works, and it will also be relevant to current games as well. Who won the Stanley Cup last year?
The Kings won the Stanley Cup 4-2 over the Devils. They won the last game 6-1.
It is just tremendous the amount of things that Siri can do. I mean, let's say I want to send a text message off to my friend Christopher. Send message to Christopher.
What do you want to say to Christopher?
Hello, how are you?
I updated your message. Ready to send it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll send your message.
And that's it. And you can do tons of stuff in that same sort of framework, which is just absolutely amazing. There are other voice assistants out there, but none of them are anywhere near as polished and as dynamic as Siri really is. So Siri is a definite plus, and it really is. It may not be helpful when you're walking around using your phone with your hands, but in a hands-free situation, Siri is the best. Talk a little bit about the camera and the display on the iPhone 5. The camera really hasn't changed much from the 4S. In fact, it's expected to be the exact same. So what does the camera really do that the 4S camera didn't? Well, there's a little bit of a difference. First of all, the camera on the front of the 5 is high definition. Other than that, the rear cameras are the same, but there are some software features to the camera that really make it dynamic, including a new feature called Panorama. Now, Panorama allows you to take a picture and just move your phone slightly and then take a large panorama shot of a room or an environment. They are really cool. I'm going to put some example shots from the camera in right now, as well as a panorama shot. Then after that, you're going to find a small video clip of taken from the iPhone 5's rear-facing camera. this is HD video capture on the iPhone 5. Just taking some video of my iPod here. Okay, so as you can see, once again, Apple is pretty much the standard for images on a phone. I mean, there are ones that are better, but you know, to be honest with you, the iPhone has always been known to take good pictures ever since the iPhone 4, and it's just kept up to that legacy, taking really good pictures. Now, I did say I was going to talk about the display here, as it kind of relates to pictures. The iPhone 5's display is absolutely stunning, just like the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 4S that were before it. Like I said, 640 by 1136 pixel resolution and a 4-inch screen size at 16 by 9 aspect ratio, and you know, colors pop. It is just the most gorgeous display I have ever seen. You know, there are like AMOLED screens and there's the HD screens and stuff. And once again, Apple's Retina display just kind of kicks their butts. Not necessarily. Like the S3 screen is gorgeous, don't get me wrong. I just feel that the iPhone 5 screen is slightly better. Now, that being said, other people may disagree, but that is my opinion. It's kind of up for your own eyes to tell, so I do recommend you go see the phone in person before you buy one, if you're in the, you know, kind of trying to decide whether or not you should get it. Right, next up is battery life. The iPhone 5 is rated to have 8 hours of browsing time on both 3G and 4G LTE, and after 40 hours of music playback. To give you some real world examples, I unplugged this phone at 8 a.m. this morning, have been using it heavily all day. It is now 9 o'clock Pacific time, so you're looking at over 12 hours usage at 13 hours usage, and it's still holding in there. Now, it did get a minor charge as I synced it for about 5 minutes earlier today, but it didn't make that much of an impact on the battery, about 2%. So overall, the iPhone 5's battery performance is superb. I don't know how they did it with LTE enabled all day, but they did it. Alright guys, let's do a quick summary here. You know, the pros, the cons, what's good, what's bad, you know, and let's go from there. Let's take a look here at the good. The iPhone 5 is a gorgeous phone. Hardware-wise, absolutely beautiful. It is a slim, thin, light phone. If you quickly pop it up against an iPod Touch that predecesses it, you can see the difference in the height. That uses the 3.5-inch screen. If I turn them both on here side by sides, that will give you a screen difference in size, roughly. It really isn't much, to be honest with you, but you know, that's a different story. Compared to some of the larger phones, like the HTC Titan 2 I have here, the Titan 2 screen just dwarfs the iPhones, but you know, that's to be expected. It's not designed to be a big phone. It's designed to have a comfortable screen size to fit in your pocket. So, physical attributes, definite plus. Sturdy build quality, really nice feel to it, nice look to it. It's a sexy phone, and I like that. Yeah, so other pluses to it are going to be the display. Once again, the display is an absolutely gorgeous 4-inch Retina display on this guy here. Other pros to this particular phone, you know, it is very well done, and I mean this in more of a way that, you know, it feels finished. It feels polished in almost all areas except for a few notable ones, which I'll mention in a second. You know, because it's the iPhone, it's the iOS. iOS has been, you know, in development essentially for 5 versions prior to this one, and this feels more finalized than any version that's, you know, preceded it. And you know, because the iPhone 5 runs just like the iPhone 4S, you get a phone that comes out of the box with software that feels finished. It doesn't really feel like it will need patches for the major operation of the phone. You know, it's pretty much good to go out of the gate. Now let's talk about a few downsides or cons to this phone. It's pricey, starting at $179 on a 3-year contract in Canada, $199 on a 2-year contract in the United States, with $100 more per increment of size. So you go 179 for 16, 279 for 32, 379 for 64. It can get pricey. Another thing that you do want to note to that is a few things that have changed software-wise, which aren't helping this phone. And there are actually going to be an upside and a downside here. iOS Maps. It's an upside and it's a downside. Upside brings turn-by-turn navigation, which has been desperately missing on the iPhone for years, and it's very good. It's one of my favorite turn-by-turn navigation. Downside, iOS Maps. It's incomplete. It needs to be refined more. It is like an early beta stage. Navigation works well. It's missing points of interest. It's missing roads, and it just needs to be fixed. That's where Apple's biggest mess up on this phone is going to be. Other places that this phone may struggle a little bit is it's a closed operating system, so you get your normal things that go along. You play by Apple's rules. You live in Apple's ecosystem. But other than that, it's overall an excellent phone. All these Android versus iPhone, debates, Windows Phone thrown in there sometimes too. Throw these all out the window. It's a phone. Pick the one that you like the best. Pick the one that looks the best. The iPhone is an extremely polished phone. When you buy an iPhone, you're getting an iPhone. You know how it's going to work. You know how it's going to feel. You know how it's going to work and feel at the same time. It sounds a little bit dumb, but if you get what I'm saying, you just know how it is. You know how the iPhone is. It doesn't change much from year to year, but I really feel like this is an incremental step to the development of the iPhone. The biggest thing on this guy is just the increase in screen size. That is huge for Apple, because Apple wasn't really planning on doing it for the longest time, and I'm glad they did. Now, let's talk quickly about one last downside that I do want to talk about. It's an upside and a downside, again, depending on how you look at it, and that is going to be the new Lightning connector on the bottom of the phone. Now, the Lightning connector is smaller. It is absolutely tiny. Here is a Lightning cable. It is about the same size, if not just a tiny bit bigger than a headphone jack. It fits in the bottom like that. It is a reversible cable. So, why do I say it's an upside and a downside? Downside to it is you are going to have to buy every single accessory again, or get an adapter to make it work with existing iPhone accessories. The upside, and I know a lot of people are complaining about the Lightning cable, saying it's a big mistake. I have to disagree. Think about it. The 30-pin dock connector came out over 10 years ago. It is extremely dated and needs to go. I agree with Apple 100% on this one. They're going to have to do it eventually in order to make the phones thinner, lighter, smaller. And they chose to do it now at a good point. I think this was the right time to change the connector. And it was desperately needing to be changed. You got to fumble around trying to get the 30-pin in the right way. And it physically would not fit on the phone. You put a 30-pin connector in here and you just kind of blow your thinness out the water. You just screw up a lot of things by adding a 30-pin connector, and I'm glad that they finally switched. It really is a step in the future for Apple and the iPhone and iOS as a whole, as you're going to see it on more devices. And you know what? Much as people are complaining about it, don't look at Lightning as a bad thing. Look at it as a good thing. Now, one thing that does disappoint me about Lightning, though, is the fact that it's only USB 2. Why in this day and age, Apple, especially with adopting it on the Macs, they didn't make this phone USB 3? Although I can pretty much predict it's going to come in the iPhone 5S or whatever comes out next. Anyways, guys, this has been a not so quick. This has been a review of the iPhone 5. This is Apple's current king of the ring. This is probably going to be the sales leader for phones worldwide. And you know what? It truly is an incremental step in my mind in the Apple ecosystem. And it's going to get, from me, an 8 out of 10. I'm going to give it that score for a few reasons. Nice hardware, nice software, familiar, predictable, solid build quality. Where does it lose points? The operating system is still getting a little bit dated, but at that, it's still a great operating system. Anyways, guys, for full coverage on the iPhone 5, make sure to check out techno-buzz.com. Techno-buzz.com is going to be your place for the full review. Now, that being said, that is just this video, but it's also going to have our sample shots and additional information about the iPhone, as well as reviews for other accessories, including the Apple EarPod headphones. Quick, update on that. It's looking pretty good so far. Apple might have gotten it right. More on a full detail review on the website soon. And yeah, I mean, take a look down in the description below for a link to the blog post for this video to view the photos I've taken, the panorama shots, and the sample video. Anyways, guys, this has been Blake from techno-buzz.com. I thank you for sticking in there on my extremely long review of the iPhone 5, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Have you visited our website at techno-buzz.com? Well, if you haven't, it's a great place to get all the latest in technology and gaming. And while you're there, make sure to visit our forum at forum.techno-buzz.com. There you can discuss gaming, technology, and even have discussions with our content creators. Have an idea for a future show? Make sure to let our creators know by visiting us in the forums at forum.techno-buzz.com.